What up? I had a thought about my practice in general in terms of like arts advocacy. What up, John in the middle here? Had a thought about the presence of black people in the arts or lack thereof. And it's funny, like with my film, Black People Don't Do Art, a lot of times I'd say that title to people and they would immediately be like, oh, well, my cousin does art and this person does art and what about such and such and this person and that. And then I'd say, name me 5 people that are black artists that have made at least $10 million off their art. And I start hearing crickets. And that's what I'm talking about. Our relationship with the arts as black people is compromised because we've yet to see art that reflects us at the same scale, with the same investment, with the same consistency, with the same veneration that we've been conditioned to apply to European art. Because we've never seen ourselves in art like we've seen reflections of other people in work from people like Norman Rockwell or Degas or Rembrandt. We've seen those images far more than we've seen reflections of ourselves, and as a result, the subconscious believes that we don't have a place in the arts, when at the same time, all of African culture is connected to art. Art for African people is culture. It's intimately tied to culture. Black people tend not to be very present in the arts the same way we're present in the NBA or the NFL or in music, because a lot of black people come from communities that are underserved and underfunded. And the arts, at least since the Reagan administration, is heavily dependent on private funding. What does that mean? And why does it apply to this conversation? Well, private funding typically means that you have to know someone with private funding to benefit from private funding. And if you're an art center in the hood, who do you know that has more than $5 million per year to give to charity? But if you come from a rich neighborhood, it's as simple as asking for a favor. That's one of the main issues with art today as well. Funding is generally private, and it goes mainly to organizations that already have the funding, that already get private funding so that they can expand as an organization, and therefore make an argument for more funding because they presumably serve more people based on the scale of the organization. At the same time, the arts organization in the hood doesn't get the same funding because it's not as large, and it can't get as large without the funding. Case in point. So I think arts patronage for everyone in the Western world is dependent on private funding, and private funding comes from people that have private funding resources. And because they're privately funded, the only way to access them is through your network. And if you don't know rich people, it's just that difficult. I also think black people don't have successful examples of existing as a black person in the arts and gathering as much resource as someone like a LeBron James. We've never seen that. Now, some may argue, well, there's this artist and this artist that does this and this, but there aren't more than 10 of them. And that matters, especially if you come from a neighborhood that doesn't approve of you doing art. I remember growing up as an artist and like taking the E train to Parsons or Sufton, taking the F train to 179, taking it to Woodhaven to the L, taking the J to Broadway Junction to like all over. And it's like people that look like us just didn't see the work. So much so that people bumping into it, people kicking it. And it's like, it's only until they see me that they're like, oh, my bad. But it's like, you didn't see this big painting? And I think that's because subconsciously we don't expect black men to be standing next to paintings on the train, in the hood. Where have you seen that? So when I do it, people looking at me like, either like I'm crazy or they're not looking at me at all. And then you got to deal with the rush hour and then people kicking your stuff, and you got to protect it and hold it over your head, and you got to make sure it doesn't get and then you got to make sure it doesn't get caught in the doors, and then it's raining, and it's just a lot. You got to put up with a lot as an artist, but it's all for the love. But saying all that to say, when you come from Detroit or Little Rock or Chicago or Camden or Wilmington or Philly, like New York, any black hood, DC, New Orleans, Houston, like, you have to, especially as a black man, you roll or you get rolled over. I suppose part of this is about, for me as a black man who's also an artist, the expectation that I'm not supposed to be into this. I'm supposed to be into basketball and other things. And at the same time, I'm not personally, I don't believe that I'm the artist stereotype. Like, I think for me, as a black man, there are assumptions that come with being an artist that are inaccurate. And those assumptions are rooted in us having never seen black male masculinity in the arts. I chose my words carefully on that, but I chose them the way I did for a reason. And I mean at scale, like Warhol scale, Kuhn scale, Kaws scale, Murakami scale, Picasso. And a lot of us just don't know. Just like a lot of people in the Western world don't know much about art or what's considered art or how much of the world that they live in and that's organized by art is actually because of art. Most people don't know that, those kind of things, especially black people. We don't even know our contributions to the arts, to inventions, to product, to society. I think that gap in knowledge and wisdom contributes to this issue as well. Without a knowledge of our culture, we don't have a knowledge of our art because the two are interconnected for people of African descent. That's just how our culture is. You have a wood carving that represents an energy. You have a metalwork that looks like one thing, but it represents several different things. That is the essence of African culture. That is the essence of African culture as it pertains to artworks. And most of us don't know that. And yes, it's a result of education and gaps in education and compromises made in education, arts education. At the same time, as it pertains to Black people, we have so many things going on and so much to deal with and so much to handle that there are areas of life, areas of interest that could provide solutions in real time should we focus on them, like the arts. What am I talking about? Who says that being interested in art or utilizing the arts has to be this big production? What if it's a new after school program from 2 to 7 or 3 to 8 where your kids have something to do? And it's not just finger painting, but it's dance classes, ballet classes, pottery, understanding art, writing, literature, like creative outlets that not only occupy young people's time, but also encourages them and conditions their mind to be creative problem solvers, And in the arts, that's great, but in society, that's necessary, especially in 2021. Just saying. The arts can be utilized to make all of our lives easier. It's just a matter of arts literacy, understanding what art is and what art can be, understanding our place in the arts historically, what we've done so that we can understand what we can do, so we can have benchmarks of true excellence that is reflective of our culture and not decisions made by people that aren't us. Like examples of excellence like Zora Neale Hurston, or Jacob Lawrence, or Romare Bearden, or Selma Burke, Augusta Savage, Alan Locke, W.B. Du Bois, Aaron Douglas, all of the key figures from James Weldon, all of the key figures from the Harlem Renaissance that get overlooked for artists that are not as historically and culturally substantial as it pertains to Black people in America. I think for Black people to be more present in the arts, we need to understand what art is and understand what roles can be played in the arts. Being in the arts doesn't necessarily mean only being a creator. It could also mean being a curator, a gallerist, a manager, someone that handles art, someone that ships art, moves art, speaks about art, organizes art, an interior decorator, the photographer of the exhibition, someone who like the same thing with football or the NFL. Everyone cannot play on the team. It's just not possible. Too many people, and there's too many physical criteria that most people don't meet. However, if you really love football that much, could be a water boy, could be a towel boy. You could be one of the dudes that throws a clipboard because something happened in the game. I'm not a sports guy, but you get it. I'm just saying, there's a place for you. You just got to know the roles. There also has to be an establishing of consistent arts patronage that would allow for the arts to be utilized by people that historically have not really seen their place in the arts. After school programs with the arts at root, and also examples of excellence. Now, this one is something that we can all do. We can look up people like the figures of the Harlem Renaissance, our Zora Neale Hurstons, our Alan Locke's, our James Weldons, W.B. Du Bois, Alan Locke, Selma Burke, Augusta Savage, all of these key figures from this era in art history in the Western world where Black people contributed so much in the forms of poetry, fine art, dance, theater, literature, research, just all of these things. And the thing that makes the Harlem Renaissance so incredible is that all of these questions were being asked at the same time, and they all had to do with Black identity. Where are we from? Where are we going? What have we all come from in the South after migrating to northern cities like Harlem, like Cleveland, like Los Angeles, like Chicago? What have we learned? What is life like now in the North compared to life in the South? And I think questions like that are still pertinent for Black people. And learning more about those figures, championing those figures, patronizing the works of art from those figures, their books, their the magazines that they were in, archival magazines, the music. You have an opportunity to truly understand the substance of Black culture and its importance, and why should all of us get a better, more clear understanding of what we've done as a people already. I think those examples of excellence and those benchmarks will begin to present themselves for a new generation of people to contribute Black culture to Black people that is reflective of us. But tell me what you think. Like, comment, share, follow, let me know. Peace.